All right, today is August 18th, 2025, week 4 of All In on Day Trading. And last week was my first green week. And over the weekend, I did some thinking and watched more videos, and just like I always do, trying to learn and all this. And I guess something I realized like last week was, and then I looked at the P&L and stuff, and it was like, most of my trades that I was losing had to do with trading SPY. And all of those were zero DTE. And I'm thinking that if I did want to trade SPY, that I need to at least do like 2 days out, just so maybe the contracts move slower and all of that. I know the contract sizes are like smaller doing zero DT, but I think they move too fast, especially for like I'm trying to get bigger moves, not necessarily scalp stuff, and I'm also not going to take very many contracts, and so the moves I get, like the dollar amounts aren't really that meaningful. I'd rather have a larger contract, move slower. I don't know. Anyway, so that was something. And looking back at my green week, I didn't trade SPY once. All I did was trade pennies and scalp options on companies that I thought were, the setups were good, and it was a good week. I didn't have very many losing trades. It was like an 80% win rate. I think I took 10-ish trades total, so I only lost 2. And over the weekend, I did some thinking about that. And then just like watching other traders and stuff, like I was, dead set on this whole, I need to trade SPY, I need to get to futures and all this type of stuff. And, I definitely have the most experience trading options. I definitely have the most experience, like with some pennies. Like there's still things about pennies and low float rippers and those on news that like get me weary, and they come with their own risks, offerings, pump and dump, liquidity when I get to a certain size, but that's no issue right now. And so I just, anyway, and then coincidentally, I watched this video of this trader who, was just talking about like, you need to have your kind of things, like not every, someone might say like, oh, trading SPY zero T options are the best for me. Like all these things end with like for me, and so it's like I need to come up with like what I think the best is for me. I know of my long-term investment strategy. I do that well. What's my trading strategy? And so coming into this week, like I would say that's where it's like, and I'm hesitant because I kind of shifted what I was going to do. Like I was basically just going to only focus on, tickers that I was maybe wanting to take options on. And I looked pre-market, I didn't see any low float rippers with news or anything that seemed prime there. So it was basically just, looking at some companies that I thought were ready, to make some moves, and whatever. There are a number of them, and I was just going to watch the charts, look price action, entries, and go from there. I was weary about a couple things. That, one, knowing, I'm changing up what I'm doing, and you shouldn't do that. 2, I know coming off of like a green week, like there's this risk of like, you just like typically lose it all and mess up and, get overconfident, break all your rules and all this type of stuff. And so I was nervous today, and maybe that's not the best place to kind of be in trading. But I did my affirmations, and, I did feel like I was being relatively patient and stuff today. So there were a couple like very small trades in the morning that like I don't even think worth mentioning because they weren't a huge P&L driver at all. But nonetheless, like, and those entries were like fine. They did what I thought they were going to do and like whatever. But there's 2 trades that I want to talk about today. It was a red day, and candidly lost, 80% of the gains from last week, which is only 1% of my account. So I didn't break any risk management rules. or anything like that. So I'll go over the trades now. So this was the first trade of the day. This is CoreWeave. Pre-market, I had marked out these levels of like, I wanted to hold this level to then look for some movement higher. And early on in the day, it kind of sold off. And around down here, it was looking very weak. On one of my charts, it might have been on my EMAs are not showing up here. I don't know why. Here, let me see if I can get the MAs. Anyways, it was like trying to regain this level here. Maybe I was looking at the 1. No, I was looking at the 5. But anyways, it was trying to regain this here, and it kept bouncing off of one of the levels. And I saw just this weakness here of it holding and not wanting to go down. And so I put in a put right about here, and it ended up flushing to the downside, and I flattened my position. So, but here was the issue, because I was green about $20. The issue with this is the spread on these options were about $20. And so when I flattened the trade, it filled at the bid, and I essentially lost $10, even though I was green $10. So it's a lesson learned where it's like, I think if I'm scalping, like I need to be very mindful of options that have wide spreads, because I'm going to need more significant of a move to cover that spread. And I knew that. I don't know, for some reason I didn't think about it. And that's where it was like, oh, I needed to put in a limit order for right here or something, or trade it off my phone. And that was super frustrating, because it did what I thought it was going to do. Obviously it reclaimed up here and then climbed. And so then the second trade of the day, that was a slight loser. And then this other trade of the day was it reclaimed this level. And yeah, I was a little late. I probably could have gotten in like right here or something. But anyways, it reclaimed this level, and I saw this as being like a bull flag here. And I was maybe looking at that on the 1 minute even. Where was that at? I was looking at this on the 1 minute, and I was seeing this as like a bull flag, and that it was going to continue, that it was going to like rip up. And this was the position that was the biggest loss. And I can't really see any reasons like why I shouldn't have taken this. To me, this was I like playing bull flag breakouts. And I did think that, holding this level, I could see it continue to go up. Because if you look at it on the daily chart, like, at least this is my interpretation, like, it had sold off pretty hard. Like, I thought it was good for a rally on this day, like, at least just a little bit higher. And so that was my thought process. Obviously, the stock did not... is this the right day now? Obviously it didn't hold here, and it ended up selling down. And the issue was, since I realized, I need to be doing limit orders to cover this spread but that was only for like fills on winning trades. Whereas if I thought, oh shit, this trade's going the other way, I should probably just flatten the trade so that it just gets me out as soon as possible. Yeah, I'll probably take the spread of whatever, but it's not going to be as bad as if it runs down here and then I have to fill the bid. So essentially that's what happened. Is I think I had canceled my stop loss or something, because I don't know why, but it wasn't really that. That wasn't the issue. The issue was that I kept trying to place sell limit orders here, and it kept running down through them. And so I ended up taking like a, close to a 1% loss on these, 1% of my account with that total, or getting close to it. But anyways, so that was frustrating because, but then again, like I said, I would take this setup and, so I think it was just the frustration with the execution kind of on my part that wasn't the best there. But I followed my plan. I didn't over risk or over lever. And, and then I think after that, I should have just been done there 100%. But what I ended up doing was went to another trade, which had kind of worked out earlier for a small win, and I liked what it was trading. I think I had played like this little scalp here and made a small bit, and then later in the day, I saw it basically just holding this level this whole time all day. And so like in my mind, I'm like, I think we could get another run up later in the afternoon, like towards the, $11 range again. Like they had news that Google took another big stake in them. They were up 10%, 10-12% kind of around here. It was up, closer to 20 up there. And so I had put on, I guess you could call it like a bigger trade. It was not that big, and ended up seeing that it looked super weak here, and I'm like, I don't like that. I think it's going to go down, and I ended up just like getting out right at the lower part of this level, but I think I got filled up there, and so that was like a 10% loss from just those 3 candles there. And then with that loss, and like, many times in the day, like this trade would work. Later in the day, it would run up. So I don't know. Again, it's like I would probably take these trades again. I just, they didn't go in my favor. And I think this one was definitely overdoing it. It was probably a revenge trade in the back of my head where it's like, if I would have won that trade earlier in the day where that bull flag broke out, I probably wouldn't have taken this trade, because I probably would have just been happy that, hey, I had a green trade, green day, like let's just shut it down. And so that I think I'm a bit frustrated with. But all in all, and then you see it was the right move to get out because it ended up continuing to sell off quite a bit. So I can't really be mad about my decision to get out. I'm just mad that it was probably a revenge trade, and I probably, shouldn't have been in it in the first place. All in all, it was only a 1% loss on my account, which is exactly what I risk in a day, and I'm willing to do that. I also have even said that I'm willing to risk up to 3% in my account, but the reality is I don't want to risk 3% because I haven't even had a 1% gain day yet. And so it's probably, again, I sell winners. I probably sell everything too early, losers and winners, but I haven't even had 1% win yet. So it's like, why would I open my risk up to 3%? Like it's just not gonna make me any better. Again, I have to have winning trades. That's what you can for sure do. So I'm happy that I followed those rules, and I was patient looking at the tickers that I was looking at. I didn't chase, a lot of these stocks, ripped off the entry, Nvidia ripped off the entry. I had this on this level going to go higher, and I didn't trade this because I didn't, feel like I got a good setup, and it ended up, just pretty much doing nothing unless you jumped in here later in the day. But that to me wasn't amazing. Same thing with Apple. It traded up. I was bullish on it, and then it just kind of came down. It wasn't my thing. Sunrun was one where it traded up. I think I entered here and made a little bit on this move up, and so that was great. But other than that, yeah, so that's the trade recap for those. And now I'll talk a little bit more. So a couple things. I'm definitely experiencing the emotional and like psychological aspect of trading. In the past, I would have beaten myself up of like, oh man, I'm a failure, and oh man, like I suck at this, and oh, I shouldn't have done this, and yada yada. And I think right now I'm able to give myself a little more perspective where it's like, okay, I followed my risk management. Like, I played the setups that I wanted to, whether they were good or not. I didn't over leverage. The only thing I could say is like my execution was bad on that one, which I could have saved a little bit of money on. And two, I probably shouldn't have been in that final trade, which was a revenge trade. But all in all, like, I was still within my total day risk parameters. I think what I'm struggling with is, one, it came after that week of feeling like I did good, and then now I just erased a lot of it. And two, it's just this whole thing of like, oh, now I'm switching up my strategy and stuff. And ultimately, like, dude, I haven't figured out what I'm good at yet anyway. And in the past, like, I would have been super discouraged and all that. But where I'm at right now is like, look, if I can't take 1% loss on my account in a day, especially being the dollar amount that it is, I have no business doing this. And that right there, this day, is just part of the process. It is not going to be enough to get me out of the game. And it's just something to learn from. Again, we're going to do tighter spread stocks. I don't care if it's only a couple tickers and there's no amazing setups. I'm going to stick to those. I'm going to keep them simple. Like, I'm not taking these crazy spread ones on these. I don't care. I'll buy shares or something. Like, I'm not going to do that. The other thing is just probably being able to not do the revenge trade thing, which I don't know. Maybe it's just, you take one trade a day, I don't know. We'll have to figure that out. But all in all, I was feeling like, oh man, like, I just messed up and shouldn't have done that. But the more I thought about it, the more I was able to put it into perspective. Whereas before, in the past, man, I would really just be slapping everything and anything, even if it didn't go with my plan or what I was thinking. Like, I would just do whatever, and that didn't work. And so at least I have some like logic behind what I did, why I did it. I know things that I can work on and do better, and that is the name of the game. And yeah, I'm going to figure out what setups like I'm good at, what things like I see that repeat that I can hit. Like, I think the other thing too is I knew that, today is probably one of the only days that I'm going to be able to trade, because tomorrow I have a bunch of meetings. The next day's FOMC. The following day there's news. The next day Powell speaks. So, I did feel like there's limited setups and all that or whatever, but those are all excuses. And probably just greedy. I'm really trying to just focus on making me better in this process and making me figuring out what works for me and do it over and over again, and then worry about scaling. And then, because there's so much that I have to learn. So that's what we're going to keep doing, and if it means I only get to take one trade a day, one trade a week, and 2 trades a week, and just there's a lot of learning going on, and then that is what it is. I need to be patient and not force things, and that's going to be hard, especially when I want to practice, I want to get better, I want to see if I can make things happen. So I think that's all I got for today, but we'll see what other days I'm able to trade. Otherwise, it's a good one to learn from. And we're still very early in this process. I'm still optimistic, and yeah, we're gonna keep it going.